Welcome to the Iron Society podcast, a weekly show dedicated to guiding Christian men on how to lead themselves and their families well. We believe that when men step up and step into their calling as the leader of their home, everyone wins. No more trying to stumble your way through becoming the leader of your home. Every week, we will bring you a message that will encourage you, guide you, or give you a swift kick in the pants. Thanks for spending some time with us today. Let's get this show on the road. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Iron Society podcast. I'm your host, Cody Chapman, and today, like promised, because I said this on the last episode, I said I'm getting Jeremiah Curry's butt back on the podcast.
Did you actually?
I did. You didn't even listen to the last podcast,
I haven't had a
sucker.
chance yet.
Come on now.
It is on my drive to work tomorrow. I will listen to it.
You better. I want that one extra listen. I want to see it.
Absolutely.
On the analytics.
Where do I go to get that again?
Go to iTunes or Spotify, bro. The Iron Society podcast.
I'm kidding, man. I'm trying to get you to shout out your podcast. How do you get it?
This is our podcast. This is
okay,
our.
You're
going to be on it so much now that it's going to turn into yours too. So, this week, for those of you that follow me on Instagram, Jeremiah, I already know you follow me on Instagram, so that's like I don't need to feel insulted. But for those of you who follow me on Instagram, I posted a video this last week about. I posted it the day after everything in Washington, D.C. started melting down, right? The day they were counting the electoral college votes for Joe Biden, and crap just hit the fan, okay? I posted a video about that, so if you haven't gone to see that, go watch that. But if you don't want to go watch that, we're going to talk about that today, that video that I posted, this idea that we were talking about. And I was going to just be like, it has to do with the last week's episode that you listened to, right, Jeremiah? But as we're recording this, you haven't even listened to it yet. So let's talk a little bit about that. You're going to get maybe a little glimpse of what we talked about in this last episode, Jeremiah.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
So you might not even have to go back and listen to the
Tomorrow
podcast.
I'll be so enlightened when I'm listening to it.
Like, where have I heard this stuff before? So what we talked about on last week's episode was the 1% rule. Like, everybody sets these really, really big, audacious goals, right? Everybody wants, like, I want to make $1 million this year. I want to lose 150 pounds. I want to, get out of debt in a year. And I want to, even though I'm like $100,000 in debt, and I want to turn my marriage around, even though for, a decade I've been treating my wife like crap. And like, everyone has these huge goals, right? And you and I have both set these kind of goals.
Absolutely. Right? Yeah, without a doubt.
And we have.
And we'll continue to, too. It's
absolutely, right?
Yeah.
Goals set the direction, right? It's the compass, and goals set the direction. Like, what is north? Where are we going? But what we talked about in this episode was the 1% rule. What are the behaviors, the very small, repeatable dominoes that you can stack on top of one another over and over and over again? What are those easy things, the low-hanging fruit?
How do you get there?
That's how you get there.
Right.
Those repeatable habits, those repeatable behaviors, that's the 1% rule. And that's what we talked about this last week. Is I even told people, I said, hey, don't go set these big old goals. Like, you can have an idea of what you want to do, and where you want to go, because you need to set direction, but obsess over the small repeatable behaviors. Right? And you've done that as you've lost weight, as you started to change things in your life, right? Like, what are some of the 1% behaviors? Like, just off the top of your head, what are some of the things that you just repeat over and over again?
For me, it's simple. It's working out, and it's taking care of my mental health, whether that's meditating or whether that's turning off Facebook and getting away from the stuff that happened in D.C. or whatever that might be. Something that I can get in the habit of doing.
Yeah.
I would say the big one for me has been working out lately. Right. And then you look at growing mentally, right? You talk about the 1% rule, Atomic Habits, right? Mm-hmm. Reading books like that.
Yeah.
The Jocko Willink book. Did I say his last name right?
Ownership. Yeah, you said it right.
Extreme Ownership.
Yep.
Just trying to be a little bit better, learn something every day, get better physically every day, get better mentally every day, get better spiritually every day.
Yep.
Pretty straightforward, just little stuff.
Because those things compound on each other,
right,
over and over again, and that's kind of what we're going to get into talking about today. Because here's what I saw yesterday. Okay, we're recording this on. I have a different watch on, so I don't have the date.
Today's the 7th.
It's the 7th, Thursday the 7th. Right. Wednesday, January 6th, is when they were going to count all the electoral college votes. Right. Now, I didn't sit there and watch crap all day long. However, people I was around all day, They had it on their iPhones, their iPods, do people even use iPods anymore? No, their iPads. They had it on their computer screens. They were making memes about it. They were sharing crap about it. They were, nonstop. Everybody is like, look what's happening at DC, right? And I kind of knew what was going on because everyone was talking about it so much. And then that was all what was going on like during the first part of the day. Then I saw an incredibly interesting turn of events in the second half of the day. I started seeing posts about how sad people were, how anxious people were, how depressed they were starting to feel, how much chaos. Like I started seeing all the memes of like, I thought we were out of 2020 and like we got, 6 days into 2021, like here's to 2022, people are already cracking those kind of jokes,
Right.
And it went from viewing this to then seeing the emotion come out. And what I noticed was, well, I'll just say the whole punchline here is what you focus on grows. And so many people and so many men are depressed, they're anxious, they feel like they're living in chaos and confusion. But then when you look at what we are consuming, what we're focusing on, it's all things that are full of anxiety that will cause depression, and it's full of chaos and confusion. And so what you're focusing on, you're just magnifying it.
The one thing I will say is whatever the event is, I'm one of those guys that appreciates the memes. The memes are funny.
They are funny.
But what you focus on grows. That's something you told me outside of Cigar Daddies.
Oh yeah, after we had that cigar one day.
And it's something in my life it's kind of been mind shifting. I don't know if that's the right term.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because I've spent a lot of time, and we've talked about this with the anxiety and the depression and all that different kind of stuff.
Well, both of us have.
Right.
Most people
have. Right?
Yeah, most people. Most dudes I know, when you actually peel back the layers a little bit,
right, for sure.
Everybody deals with anxiety and depression, and most people don't know that. I have bouts with that. I mean, when you found out, you were like, "Oh, what, dude? We should talk about this."
Right?
It was like a door had just opened.
Yeah.
Most people don't know about that, mainly because I don't glorify it. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't magnify it. I don't focus on it because I don't want it to grow. Right. I don't hide it, obviously, because I'll talk about it with guys like you or other guys in the Iron Society. But yeah, we all deal with it.
Yeah, hiding it. I mean, I hate it.
Sure. Most guys hide it.
There's not many people, outside of you and my wife and maybe a few others who know that I've gone through that.
Yeah.
The Iron Society, shout out. But I would spend a lot of time focusing on that. Whatever that issue was that was causing me anxiety, health, politics, world issues, whatever it might be. In fact, when the whole coronavirus started, I kind of saw that creeping back in. Not that I'm overly scared of coronavirus, but just the direction the world and everything's heading.
Totally.
Like I started kind of noticing that it was getting to me and creating that in my mind.
Yep.
And that's when I unfollowed all the news channels on Facebook, and quite honestly, 97% of the people that I'm friends with on Facebook. Just to not feed into that.
Yeah.
Right?
Isn't it incredible how just shutting off the switch of those things can instantly, like, everybody thinks that anxiety and depression, like, well, not everybody, but so many people think anxiety and depression is this, it's like this boogeyman that's out like hunting for you, and you better freaking be scared of it, because if it finds you, oh God, you are ruined for life. You're always going to have anxiety and depression once that boogeyman finds you. Right? Now, I do not want to minimize clinical anxiety and depression. I do not want to minimize that. I have friends that have like legitimate hormonal brain stuff going on, that they have real stuff. And then there's seasonal affective disorder, all those things, right? Those are very, very real. I'm talking about the anxiety and depression and the confusion and chaos as men that we start to feel simply from the crap we put inside of our ears and in front of our eyes.
Well, I mean, I think quite honestly, as someone who, I don't know that I would say I was diagnosed. Like, I've been on medication. I've gone through a lot of this different stuff. I think it gives you an excuse.
Oh, totally.
Right? You have this excuse, this is why my marriage isn't working. This is why I'm not successful at work.
Yeah.
For whatever problems you face in your life, that anxiety and depression gives you an excuse. And it did for me.
Yep.
And there's still times where it still does that. And I know there's a lot of people out there who struggle with it a lot more than I do or I did.
Yep.
But for me, it was a blanket, right? It was something I could point to and say, this is why I'm struggling here, is because I have this anxiety and depression. And I got to a point where, I don't want to have that. I still struggle with everything, right? I still have the anxiety. I still have the moments of depression. Although a lot fewer and further between these days.
I would say that right now, I would say you own it and it doesn't own
correct.
you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And that's something where, again, I know that there's people out there who have it a lot worse than I do.
Sure.
But it kind of got to the point where I was looking at all this stuff in my life, and like, I don't want my life controlled. I want to control my life.
Yeah.
And I was able to take the steps, and a lot of that was, kind of starting with the fitness and getting into the mental and the spiritual side of stuff, and taking control of that.
The formula, as we're calling it now.
Right, the formula.
Yeah. Which it's not a joke. Like, I mean, when I started calling it the formula like last week on a live video I did. And then as I started repeating it a little bit, you're good. You don't have to lean that far back away from me. He went to take a sip of his drink and like leaned all the way back. Like,
I just don't want you guys to hear me drinking.
He won't. Not with these sweet mics.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I started jokingly calling it the formula, but then I'm like, no, like this is a legitimate formula.
Yeah, it works.
And it's not like some random anecdote I came up with. It's because I've seen guys like you lose weight, start to take back your mental health and get mentally stronger, and then start to grow in all these other areas. And it happened because these few ingredients at the front end started getting in line and locked in,
and I don't know what everyone deals with, right? Everyone goes through a different struggle, but what I can tell you is from my point of view, from my experience, there was a time in my life where I was completely shut off to everyone, to my kids, to my wife.
That was after your heart stuff, right?
Yeah, after the heart stuff.
Yeah.
And that's when I would say the anxiety and depression was astronomical.
Sure.
But and it's not to say like I'm a perfect person, right? I'm not the perfect husband. I'm not the perfect dad. I still make mistakes, but I would say me now versus me, 3 years ago, totally different people.
Yep.
Right. And it's because I was able to realize that I didn't want anything to control my life.
Yeah.
I wanted to be in charge of how I felt and how I interacted with my family and how I interacted with my friends.
Yep.
Then quite honestly, at the time, I really didn't have any friends.
Yeah.
At least close brothers.
Yep.
It's something that I struggled with, but, through these steps and through these different avenues, I was able to take control of it. And, while I won't go out there and say everyone can do this, because everyone does deal with it with different stuff than I dealt with.
Totally.
But there are steps you can take to be better.
Absolutely.
Right? You're not going to go from depressed and anxious one night to perfectly happy the next day, right?
Absolutely.
It gets back to those 1%.
Yep.
What can I do today so that tomorrow I'm better?
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the things, right? So when it comes to what we focus on grows, that is true. That is true. We're not going to debate that. And if you want to fight us on that, go ahead and send me a DM and I'll fight you, or I'll just block you because I don't have the time for that. I don't. But let's talk about.
Send him a DM now.
Yeah, I'm gonna send you a DM right now, you jerk. So let's talk about how you start to control that a little more, right? How you start to focus on better things to make better things grow. The first thing that I would recommend, it's kind of like, you ever heard of like starving the bad dog, feeding the good dog? You ever heard of that analogy? Like there's two dogs, right? One is kind of the bad dog and one's the good dog, right? And if you keep feeding the bad dog, that dog is going to keep getting stronger. It's going to be nourished and it's going to keep attacking you while you're not feeding this good dog. And so you need to starve the bad dog. So whatever it is, and you said this earlier, you shut off different parts of your Facebook feed, right? You unfollowed news stuff. You stopped talking to some people probably. You started to starve that dog essentially. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, it goes back to what we talked about, right? What you focus on grows.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to focus on that stuff anymore. I don't want to focus on my fear or my anxiety or my issues with the world or discontent with whatever political party might be in charge at the time or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
I can't control that, right? Yeah. I can't control who's running the government outside of voting. Not saying don't.
Correct.
Vote.
Yes.
All I can do is voice my opinions.
Yeah.
And then live my life.
Yep.
I can't let outside external issues change who I am or how I act or how I treat my friends and family.
Yeah. And I would take it, taking it into our marriages and our parenting, right? And even, we could apply this to every area of our life. Fitness, spiritual, work, all this. But specifically with marriage, I want to like talk to dudes who your marriage is not necessarily in the place you want it right now, right? Like your marriage is not dialed. It's not fun necessarily. I know so many guys who will get together with other guys and basically talk about how crappy their marriages are as a joke. And
Chris, he's not talking about me, I promise.
Chris, he's not. Yeah, he's not. Christina's Jeremiah's not talking about you. We only talk good about you. But if you have friends that support your negative thinking about your marriage, I'll just say those are not friends.
Find new friends.
Find new ones. Cut them off. Get away. They are literally a cancer that is feeding the demise of your marriage. Like that. And the same thing goes for your kids. If you're getting around other dads who want to, I'm just gonna say it, maybe I don't know if I have to. I think this might be the first word I've ever said on this podcast that people might disagree with. But if you're just around other dads that want to bitch and moan about how hard it is to be a dad, get away from them. Like they're not helping you become a better dad. They're feeding that bad dog. Like,
Right.
That's what they're doing.
Yeah. The one thing I would say to that is being a dad is hard.
Sure.
But at the same time, if you can't find the joys in what you're doing, the joys in raising your children and being a part of their lives and creating men and women for the future of our world, why are you a dad?
Yeah.
Like there's times where I get frustrated with my kids, right? I've
100%.
got 4 of them, right?
I was frustrated with my kids before we walked in here to record this.
Right. But ultimately, like I know there was times where my dad was frustrated with me.
Yeah.
Right. And frustrated with my sister, but you don't complain about that, right? You don't talk to other people about not liking being a dad because that just feeds that dog and it creates that issue where every time your children do something that irritates you or makes you mad or whatever it is, it just builds and builds and builds because you never see the positive in it.
And to go a little neuroscience on people, I think we've talked about this in the episodes where we actually, with you and Ryan, talked about anxiety and depression. If you haven't listened to those are the most listened to 2 episodes of the podcast that we've ever had. I don't know what number they are right now, but just, I don't know, go on iTunes, Spotify, and like flip through and you'll see where we talked about anxiety and depression. But there's a part of your brainstem that is called the reticular activating system. And that part of your brainstem is literally like this gatekeeper of what is brought into your consciousness. And so like if you've ever been thinking about buying a new car and you're like, I really want to buy a sweet new Toyota Tundra or whatever, right? Is that I guess that's my Toyota Tundra voice, which is,
that's a nice voice.
Sounds like a Ford voice. Maybe, I don't know, or
Ford,
Dodge.
Yeah.
I don't
Chevy,
know. Whatever.
Yeah.
Chevy.
One of those redneck cars.
Yeah, right. But it you want something, and then all of a sudden you start seeing it more, and you're like, "Whoa, that's crazy!" I was thinking about getting that car over there, And it's because you're telling your reticular activating system what's important, and so it's actually allowing you to see more of those things. Conversely, it can happen too, right? If you're with the kids, if you're constantly pissing and moaning about how bad your kids are, and you hate when they do X, Y, and Z, you're telling your reticular activating system what is most important to you. And so every time your kids do that, it is going to be brought front and center into your consciousness and into your mind. And you'd be like, see, I told you that my kids are always doing this. The problem is when you've trained your brain to see that as important, it won't just reveal those things to you. It shields you from the other things. So when your kids are actually obedient and they are actually being awesome and fun to be around and they are actually being a joy, you won't even see it because you've trained your brain to block it out.
Right. Works with spouses too.
It's same thing, right? And this is when Steph and I ran On Purpose Marriage. This was one of the biggest things we talked about, of saying about your spouse, like, my spouse always does this, or my spouse never does this, or blah, 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 blah. Every time you say it, you are training your brain, right? Like even in the Bible, it says faith comes by hearing. So every time you hear something, it is increasing your faith in whatever it is you're hearing. So when you're listening to all your freaking news radio, when you're listening to all this stuff, or you're listening to yourself talk about your spouse or your kids, you're increasing your faith in those things. So starve the bad dog.
Starve the bad dog.
Starve the bad dog. You should be getting animal services called on that imaginary dog because you're starving it to death. The second thing I think about, the best way I can think about describing it is like control what goes in your cookie batter. And you're like, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense, Chapman. Right? Like my wife and my daughter love baking together. My daughter, she's 3 years old, and she can literally go in the kitchen by herself, and she knows exactly what to put into her sweet pink little mixing jar. She's 3. She knows what measuring cups to use. She knows what ingredients to grab. She knows exactly what needs to go into that pink mixing pot to make her chocolate chip cookies because she's repeated over and over again.
I bet there's a lot of chocolate chips in there.
Oh, bro, we go through bags of Costco chocolate chips at our house. I'm not, and I don't eat any of them. My kids just dumb on them like they're Skittles, like chocolate Skittles. But control what goes in your cookie batter, right? So, and what I mean by that is you want a particular outcome. You want chocolate chip cookies, right? But if you're all of a sudden shoving 5 pounds of crap into it, you're not going to get the outcome you want. And so you have to control it. It's very similar to like starving the bad dog, but then controlling, actually curating. Yeah, go ahead and move your mic. You're going to be totally fine. You control the good that goes into it, right? So,
right.
My daughter knowing the sugar, knowing the chocolate chip cookies that go in there, all of that. Those are all the good things that produce good outcomes. So it's not just starving yourself from the bad things. It's figuring out what are the good things I'm going to intentionally add into my cookie jar to make these cookies. Right. So when I think about that in particular, like we even talked about the other week, like for a while during the summer there, I mean, we were golfing like multiple times a week together. We were grabbing coffee. We were having cigars together. It's like, I feel like in the Northwest, when it gets to wintertime, like everyone becomes hermits, and it's like this, it's cold. The weather sucks.
It's dark at
it's
noon.
Dark. It feels like at noon. It feels like it's dark all day. But, and I think through the summer, I would say both of us, I mean, I can only speak for myself, but mentally, I was in the best place I could possibly be.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Right?
Yeah, we talked about that, like you said. It was the summer was great.
Yeah.
Right? And I went through, I don't know, probably a month or two ago, a little phase where, I kind of got away from the fitness and a lot of this different stuff that I was doing to help myself. And it didn't take long for me to realize, like, oh, I need to continue doing this, right? Especially this time of year when it's dark all the time and you're not outside as much and you're not able to do as much stuff. And you kind of feel like you get in this routine of, all right, let's go to work, let's get home, let's get the kids to bed, let's go to bed, let's wake up tomorrow and do it again.
Yeah.
But continuing those habits that help you get better in the first place.
Yep. And everybody's going to have different things to put into their like mixing jar to make their cookies. Yeah. Right. Like for me, I love getting coffee, like with you. Like that's, I like that. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's like a combination of like caffeine and waking up early and being around people that just fires me up.
Well, those early morning walks too, right? You're outside, it's crisp.
Right.
Especially in the summer, you can do it in shorts and a t-shirt at 5 o'clock in the morning.
So good. That's fantastic.
Good stuff,
yeah. Working out is definitely one of those things for me. I've realized like for me, like I got to work out in the morning. Like I just worked out after work right now. And I can absolutely tell the difference I have at work when I work out in the evening and when I work out in the morning. Like it affects my whole day.
So I just won't do it in the evening. If I don't get it done in the morning.
Screw that. I'm not doing it.
Right, yeah.
But you gotta know the right things to put in as well.
Yeah.
And whether that's, I mean, like every morning I wake up and I at least read a proverb in the Bible and maybe another chapter or, listen to some worship music or something. I'm just trying to put as many things into the mix that I can that I know are going to positively influence me, you know, because I know that I'm going to go be around people in some places that are going to be blaring all this crap from CNN and Fox and,
Right.
I don't even know all the TV.
I like how you said both sides.
Did I?
Not
Okay, I don't
just-
even
not
know
just
which
pick
side
one,
is.
right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I don't
But-
know which one's either,
But like, I know I'm going to see some of those things. It's inevitable, right? As I'm
Yeah.
scrolling through Instagram or whatever. And so like, I have to be super aware and super conscious of the fact that if I'm going to absorb 5 pounds of that stuff throughout the day, I have to be super, super aware to throw 50 pounds of the other stuff
Right.
in so that it basically like is so outweighed in my heart and in my mind,
Right.
You're trying to call over my cat right now.
Yeah.
We're in the middle of a podcast. You're calling over my cat, Jer.
I like animals. What can I say? And she's
So-
cute, man.
She is. She's adorable. She's a little kitty.
Yeah, it's you can't live in this world of technology and everything without getting some of that stuff in your life. It's impossible,
Absolutely.
right? Whether that's from social media or TV or friends or family, you can't filter it out. But what you
Yeah.
can do is you can take the steps to minimize it.
Absolutely.
And that's what I've tried to do in my life by unfollowing news channels on Facebook.
Yep.
I still try to stay informed, right? I want to know what's going on in the world,
Yeah.
but I don't need so much of it, right? I don't
Yep.
need 4 hours of coronavirus updates every day.
Yep.
I don't need 17 hours of Washington, D.C. coverage. Like, I know
Yeah.
enough to know what's going on.
Yep.
And I can certainly form my own opinions on that. Not everyone might agree with those, but
Yeah.
you don't need your whole life to revolve around that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
right? You can't get away from it. There's nothing you can do unless you want to go live out in the woods with no television and
Which
no
sounds
cable,
incredible.
which would be awesome.
It sounds almost like my life right now. I live in the woods. I don't have TV.
Yeah.
Man, I'm like living the life you
But I
just
bet you got
described.
Instagram. In fact, I know you got Instagram.
I do have Instagram.
Yeah. But to my point, right? You can't, without completely shutting yourself off from the world,
Yeah.
you can't completely get away from it. So
Yeah.
what do you do in those other times in the day to help balance that out?
Mm-hmm.
How do you maintain that positive mental attitude?
Yeah.
Because this world can get you down,
Yeah.
right? Facebook can get you down. The news can get you down. Television shows can get you down,
Yep.
right? So what do you do to balance that out?
And one of the things I just thought of as you're talking about that, because, when we were going through EMT school, I felt like we actually went through it together.
Yeah,
'Cause
I feel like I was there with you.
Yeah, you're an EMS professional, just like me.
I pretty much I
You
could
just
go
didn't
give
take
someone
any
a
of the tests.
tracheotomy right now, right? With a pen, right? Stab
one
them
of
in throat.
one of the protocols that we use if somebody gets some kind of poisonous substance either on their skin or in their eye is we irrigate it and flood it like rigorously, like
Yeah.
for 20-30 minutes, right? So just a little bit of fentanyl gets on your skin, which will pretty much kill you if it gets absorbed, or you get some kind of poison in your eye. We're just going to flood We're just going to flood that crap with water for 20-30 minutes. And the purpose is to basically dilute the toxin that was on there so much by so much water that it doesn't actually affect you. And I think that's probably what I'm trying to say about like adding as much of the good stuff as you can in your life, because you're going to get those toxins throughout your day. You're going to get it. But if you're irrigating and flooding yourself with the other stuff, you just bend over and pick her up, dude. You're like sitting here. You guys don't see this because this isn't a video podcast right now. But yeah, my cat is like, now Jeremiah's just like flirting with my cat. It's ridiculous.
This cat and I bonded on our poker night.
We did the other night, dude. That was great.
Yeah.
But just flooding it so that it dilutes it. Now the cat just jumped up on his lap. My goodness. I feel like we need to start
Probably hear it purring.
Yeah, probably at some point. But just put so much of the good stuff in that it totally dilutes and washes away the other stuff.
Right.
But and this is the last thing I want to leave guys with, and is the fact that we lead our wives and our families from the well within, essentially, right? Like we have this well inside of us that we have to pour out from all the time. And that's how we lead our family. That's how we lead our kids. That's how we show up at work and our business with our friends. It's all this, right? And we should not be feeding people from a well that we are poisoning beforehand. And all the different things that we could consume throughout the day, if it's toxic to us, what we're doing is we're saying, I'm okay with letting this infect my well right now, knowing it's eventually going to come through to other people. Right. And that's just not fair to the people around you.
Yep.
You know, I mean, I've seen it in my life where I've, for whatever reason, allowed too much of that stuff to get in. So I become stressed, I become anxious. And then all of a sudden, what's the next thing that happens with my kids? I get short with my kids. Right? And that's not because they were doing anything out of the ordinary, but it's just because I allowed this to become overwhelmed and stressed and anxious. And so that's what came out of my well, right? And so I think as men, as the leaders of our homes, we have to remember, like, to not poison the well from which we want to feed people from.
Yeah. I kind of had one of those moments the other day. Actually, I was at home right after a long day at work.
Yeah.
I say long day at work. I don't work that hard, but it's frustrating and stressful, but it's not difficult.
Yeah.
Right. And I was kind of tired and just kind of sitting on the couch watching TV, and you just kind of realize, like, why am I in a bad mood? Mm-hmm. Like, what was work really that stressful or bad? Yeah, I had its moments, right? But are you going to let 10 seconds ruin the rest of your day?
Yeah.
And, the rest of that night, my son and I, we wrestled and had some fun and did some different stuff. And just, you're going to fall into these moods where you're in a bad mood.
Yeah.
Or maybe you're not even in a bad mood, but you're just tired and you're shut off. But how do you pull yourself out of that?
Yep.
Right? How do you, to your point, not feed these people from a poisoned well?
Yep.
Right? How do you lead without putting all your negative thoughts onto other people?
Totally.
Right. And it's a hard thing to do.
Yep.
Right. It's something I still struggle with. I mean, quite frankly, it's probably something we all struggle with.
Yeah.
And it's probably something that's not going to go away. You're always going to have those days for whatever reason you're in a bad mood. But how do you get past that? And how do you not let that affect other people around you? And how do you lead your family and lead your friends, lead your coworkers, whatever it might be?
Yeah.
From a positive side of you.
Yep.
Right?
I've always said, man, don't let your bad day turn into your family's bad night.
Right.
Yeah. Like, when you pull up in your driveway, we've all got to learn what our reset switch is before we get out of that car,
right.
And like where we moved, like the driveway you come down, there's a little turn off right there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where mine is now. Like, I'll turn off right there because I know my kids are always out here looking for me. So when I drive up, I mean, little Callie Grace is already run into the car, daddy, daddy, daddy.
Right.
And so if that's something that, you struggle with, and I mean, I have my thing that I do to reset myself. I think all of us have to have a reset button that we can push on ourselves to not make our bad day turn into our family's bad night. It's just not fair.
I like that, though. I don't really have one of those. I'll have to find a spot on my drive home and make that my reset point.
Yeah. And people make fun of me sometimes for it. They're like, man, Cody, like, you always have, like, you so often you have cigars on the way home from work. And I'm like, it's my reset button, homie. Like, like, and some people take issue with it, but I'm like, no, man, like, it refreshes me, and it is not all the time, but like, if you ever see me, pull out my cigar cutter and light up a stogie on the way home, you're like, that was a rough day at work. Like, you just,
it's also on the fourth hole at Capital City when I'm kicking his butt.
Yeah. But I mean, Steph always knows when I had a bad day at work because I came home. She's like, do you have a cigar on the way home? I was like, yeah. She's like, rough day at work, huh? Yep. So anyways, guys, I hope this, rambling for 33 minutes, was beneficial to you. I hope it was valuable to you. I hope he gave you at least one little nugget to walk away with, because that's the purpose of all this, is just to talk back and forth. And I'd love having Jeremiah on the podcast. We got to figure this out, dude, where you can just record all of them with me, because bantering back and forth is way more fun.
I love it. I'm here.
We got to get Ryan back too.
Let's text him. Should we call him?
What are you doing over here, dude?
Hold the phone up to the microphone.
Yeah. But anyways, guys, thanks so much for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and share the podcast, because just get all this out to more and more men. That's the whole purpose of it.
Yeah, the one thing I'll say is, I know, at least in my struggles, right, I always felt like I was the only one going through something like that. And in the last few years, I've realized that I would say more men struggle with stuff like this than don't.
I think everyone
significantly
does.
more.
I think
men.
everybody does, man.
You're not the only one that's dealing with stuff.
No.
Reach out to someone who a friend, a mentor, someone you trust, someone you don't know.
Yeah.
Send Cody a message.
Yep.
Reach out to someone, because there's people out there going through the same thing. There's people who are in various stages of this, whether they're just starting or whether they're starting to figure out their plan to better themselves, or whether it's something that they've kind of overcame in their life.
Yep.
Learn from people, steal what they're doing, and do it yourself. Find out what works.
I mean, it's part of the Iron Code, right? The N in Iron Code is no lone wolves. We're better together.
Right.
Like that is why that is in there. We do not believe. We just don't believe in the whole lone wolf thing.
And that's probably something I didn't say when I talked about what helped me out, but brothers.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. Having our group of men.
Yep.
You, me, Ryan, Sanchez, Steve,
Yep.
all those guys.
Yeah.
And something I've never had, right? I never had
Yep.
that support system, and it's night and day difference.
Yep.
So,
Guys who think they can do it alone are the most prideful dudes on the planet. Like, I'm like, you seriously think you got that? You're that good?
Yeah.
Like, man, I can't wait for you to be humbled one day. Like, guys like that, I'm like, you're going to run into a wall so hard.
Yeah.
And you've been pushing relationships away for so long, you're going to have no one to run to. And you're going to realize, like, you were made for relationship.
Right.
Like, you were made for it.
A night and day difference.
Yeah.
Without this group of men that we have.
Yeah.
Right. I'm right back where I was.
Yep.
Right. I'm probably divorced. I'm probably living with my kids every other weekend. Right.
You might be dead, dude.
Right. Yeah, I might be dead. There's a good chance.
With the stuff you went through.
It's find your dudes, man. Find your group of men that'll support you and help you get better.
Yeah.
Not just in the good times, but challenge you in the hard times as well.
Absolutely.
So.
Cool, man. With that said, we'll see y'all next week. See ya.
See ya.
Hey, guys. I wanted to take a quick second to tell you about the Iron Society Brotherhood. You, along with men everywhere, are facing a huge problem right now. You're busier than ever trying to keep up with work, paying the bills, your marriage, and raising children. You're so busy, however, that you don't really feel like you're making any significant progress. You feel like you're just treading water and surviving. And if you don't fix this problem, things will continue to get much worse. Your physical, mental, and spiritual health will continue to erode and suffer. And your marriage, your family, and your finances will continue to feel like they are just getting by. And we know that's not how you want to live. We both know that's not how you were meant to live. So, I'd like to introduce you to the Iron Society Brotherhood. The ISB, as we like to call it, is a group of men who have decided that they don't want to just get by and survive any longer. It's a group of men that are choosing to intentionally invest and grow in their physical, mental, and spiritual health, as well as purposefully investing in their marriage and growing as fathers. We know that we are better together, and that's why every day inside the Iron Society Brotherhood, we motivate, encourage, and spur one another toward becoming the man that God has created us to be. If you're done with just surviving and just getting by and want to begin your personal transformation into the man you were meant to become, visit ironsociety.co/brotherhood to join. We hope to see you inside the Brotherhood.